Mr. Chairman, you are up.
Yeah, I'm in Glen Ellen right now.
Potential topic.
Well, temporarily, it's with family. But
Mr. Chairman, you are up.
Up?
You are up.
Oh, okay.
yeah, that's the new guy.
Need to go up there?
Is that the new guy?
Yeah, I have the, what do you call it? We won't have any controversy, I hope. But Kopi's on the committee.
Yes, he is, I believe.
He's very active. He is a farmer.
And I am present. If we don't get any rain, I won't be a farmer.
We got 1/4 of an inch. That's not enough to wet your whistle.
What the hell did I do there?
That's down south, isn't it, Mavis?
Yeah, in the last couple of weeks, we got 1/4 of an inch 2 times, but that's like the total for many weeks. I'm a farmer in my backyard. I'm a band of urban farmers.
Good for you. Everybody needs to learn how to garden, to be honest. But yeah, we haven't had rain to speak of. We had a couple quarters go through. In the past 8 weeks, we have not accumulated more than 1 inch.
Mr. Kopi, let's call a meeting to order with roll call.
Allen,
Allen present. Good morning.
Braun here.
Braz,
Braz here.
Kopi, Leonard,
Leonard here.
Sanchez,
Sanchez here.
Jepro, Purok, and Kenyon.
We're here.
Thank
We need a motion to approve the minutes from April 22nd.
Leonard so
Alan
moves.
Leonard,
Braun second.
Brown seconds. Is there discussion on these minutes? We're ready to vote.
Braun,
Yes.
Braz, Kopi.
Yeah, Fraz, yes.
Thank you. Kopi, Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Allen,
Allen, aye.
The minutes are approved. Is there any public comment? Thank God, no. Kane County Farm Bureau, Stephen, what do you have for us?
Well, judging from your previous comments, probably not
Stephen, you
very
don't have
much.
to wear a mask for this group. We're adults.
Kopi,
Sorry,
Mr. Chairman, Kopi is present. Sorry about that.
We got you at the top.
I've become so accustomed to the mask, sometimes I don't know I have it on. Mr. Leonard and Ms. Bates talked about the rainfall. I guess the good thing about the low amounts of rainfall is we have probably had the fastest planting progress for crops in northern Illinois in history. I haven't seen the report of the Illinois State Water Survey, but I'm sure that planting progress pretty much around the state has also progressed at that kind of pace. Speaking of planting, 2 weeks ago tomorrow, we had a planting visit on a farm in western Kane County. Wayne Gerke, a younger farmer, had Representative Lauren Underwood come out and take a turn planting some corn. She asked for that opportunity, get in the seat of the tractor and ride around with the farmer and learn a little bit more about agriculture and corn farming and to get a young farmer's perspective on a number of things in regards to beginning farming and obtaining credit, but also in regards to some of the tax proposals that are in front of Congress in Washington, D.C. right now. So that was kind of a unique opportunity. We believe we've got a couple more coming up. We have a conference call later today with a statewide commodity group that wants to invite the House Minority Ag spokesperson to Kane County in June for a visit That Commodity Association has not told us yet whether that will be a meet and greet or a fundraiser. But I have a feeling that regardless of which direction they choose to go, we will help that local farmer to arrange that activity. And again, to get a minority spokesperson out to have a conversation is kind of a rare opportunity. And in July, we are trying to schedule a wheat harvest visit with the lieutenant governor to give her an opportunity to ride around in a combine. And she has done probably as much as anybody in the state executive branch in recent years to promote agriculture, and especially in regards to local foods. So the carrot that we will dangle is an opportunity for 1 or 2 specialty crop farm visits also in combination with that opportunity to come out and drive a combine and help with the wheat harvest. Couple of other things in local news. I did bring copies of our May King County Farmer for Mr. Braun and Mr. Leonard and Mr. Kenyon, since they're the 3 that are here in person today. It does have information on 14 college scholarships that are not-for-profit foundation awarded this year. I did talk to Mr. Van Kerkhoff before the meeting, and he said that the county's ethics officer has determined that the King County Farm Bureau can offer complimentary memberships to county ag committee members. So we will be corresponding with the county ag committee through email, through your county board email accounts, and attaching a membership agreement, which we will need to do in order to issue that complimentary membership. But that will give county ag committee members complimentary copies, not only of our local King County Farmer, but also the Illinois Farm Bureau's weekly publication, Farm Week, on farm news and public policy and markets and weather, and a quarterly magazine called Partners that has a little bit more information about local foods and tourism opportunities and festivals in and around Illinois. So we will put that into effect as soon as possible. I also have here today for the county board members and the staff some refrigerator magnets about what is in season to promote local foods. And I will close reminding the members here and online that yesterday I sent out copies of an electronic newsletter called Link, Local Information, News and Know-How. We do that every other month, and yesterday's topic was farmland assessments. May is the month when the farmland assessment review committees get together with the supervisor of assessments. That happened on Monday of this week in Kane County. But we think it's important that all county board members and local government officials understand how the farmland assessment formula works and the importance to agriculture as an industry of preserving that formula and that assessment method in Illinois, because without it, there would be a whole lot of farmland for sale for other purposes. Because if we valued farmland the way we value other property, nobody in urban areas, it just would not be a profitable enterprise. So, thank you.
I got my bills, and our land is valued on how much we can produce and what it's worth. And we think that's a fair way to do it, other than if you're developable. It's quite a difference.
Mr. Chair.
Look at that. Called me back 3 days late. That's my insurance guy.
Mr. Chair. I got a question on that, and I know there's a seminar coming up on that farmland tax assessment procedure soon, webinar. So I'm going to watch in on that, even though it's my birthday on that day. I'll still watch in. But I got a question, because the way I read what you sent out yesterday was it's based on a 5-year rolling average, correct?
That is correct.
So when you see corn going for $8 a bushel, that's great, but yet 3 years from now, or 4 years, or 5 or 6 years from now, when corn's back at $3 a bushel, but you're being taxed on the rolling 5-year average of $8 a bushel, it's kind of a not such a good thing, right?
There is no perfect tax law.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's true. It does kind of eliminate the extreme highs and lows and the volatility. We're in a similar situation right now, regardless of low prices, and we're in that situation because of extremely low interest rates. So that has had quite an impact on taxes, on increasing taxes on farmland. But that's the formula, and it's the best that we can come up with. So.
Thank you.
You have to keep track of this daily price on corn. It went down to 88 cents last week.
Did it?
Yeah, it's coming back, but you know, what goes up, you know, will come down, and what it'll be slow to come back. But they pick out a couple dates in which they recognize the price, and it would be at harvest time, a couple of prices. It's a system that's worked pretty well in our area. In Southern Illinois, it hasn't been as good because their production is lower. And Mr. Arnold, what do you have in your freezer? Mr. Arnold?
Ice cream and frozen pizza. Are you not talking about my home, are you?
No.
Okay.
You have pork chops?
Pork chops, bratwurst, steaks,
Where do you get your pork
Italian
chops?
links. Everything comes from Inboden's Meats in DeKalb. So if you've never been to Inboden's Meats, it's kind of a specialty store, kind of like the Blue Goose. Lot of specialty products, but we do stock all kinds of meats for the barbecue grill for the summer. Stop by and see us anytime.
Okay, but I have friends that ask me to buy them and stuff like that, and but it's the best if they're thicker.
And
All
that's
about quality, Stephen.
And that's in the city of DeKalb?
Who is this?
Alan.
This is Alan asking the question
Oh,
of
really?
where this market is.
The market is in DeKalb, but we do carry many of the meats that they sell at the market in DeKalb at the Farm Bureau office on Randall Road in St. Charles.
First Avenue is one of the cross streets, but if you really want, it's not cheap, but it's good. You don't get that at Mother Jewel. Do you want to move to the Northern Illinois Food Bank?
Mr.
Question,
Chairman.
please.
Oh,
Bates, question.
Bates?
Bates, please.
I got 3 of them. Okay.
Okay. Can we get a ride on a combine?
You will have to behave 2 months in a row. 3 months, that's Leonard, to qualify.
Okay. I want to understand farming better, right?
We'll get you a ride in the combine.
Okay, thanks.
Miss Bates, I'll give you a ride in the combine. For crying out loud.
Oh,
And you don't even have.
I don't know if we want you two to collaborate. We could be in trouble.
Mr. Chairman, this is Alan again.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that one of my fondest memories as a real little kid, I was lucky enough to grow up on my grandparents' farm between Sycamore and DeKalb and Cortland, Illinois. And for a while, my dad farmed after he got back from World War II. So I was a little kid, but one of my memories is of riding on a combine with him. And we were moving across the field coming in because it was going to rain. And you could see the storm moving in behind us. And it was just a wonderful thing to be with your dad on a big piece of farm equipment with all of the prairie around you and the storm chasing you back to the barn. Thanks.
Well, you've blown your cover. Now everybody knows you're a farm girl. That's from DeKalb. Is the Northern Illinois Food Bank person on the line?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, I am.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah,
All right,
so
Julia?
my name, no, my name is Chelsea Hernandez. Actually, I'm stepping in for Julia. Moving forward, she decided to take another position, but
You have to repeat your name and you have to talk right into your microphone because even our our clerk can't get the name. So what's your name again?
Sorry. My name is Chelsea Hernandez. So I am sort of Julia's peer at the food bank. I'm a marketing and communication specialist with the food bank. And I sort of specialize in, doing community outreach. And, like I'm happy to be here to, provide any updates that the food bank can provide, about the work that we're doing in Kane County. And I know that for a lot of folks, across Northern Illinois, like this is still sort of like a transitional period, coming out of a crisis. And we, as a food bank, have been, trying to take some, I guess, like innovative next steps to sort of bridge the gap between need and, like the capacity that we have. So, yeah, if like this past month, like throughout Northern Illinois, we have distributed 8.6 million meals, which is still an increase from where we were at last year. So, we can still see that, folks are still on the road to recovery across Northern Illinois. And, I'd be happy to answer any questions to the best of my ability about King County specifically or any of like the community outreach that we're doing, especially going into these summer months. Yeah, and it's great to meet all of you, and I look forward to sitting in on these meetings in the future.
We really had a hard time understanding you. You're going to have to do better because our young lady here couldn't even.
Really? Hold on.
She'll take it off the recording.
Mr. Chairman, it's Alan again.
Oh, how many questions this time?
Could I just speak to Chelsea for a minute? Chelsea, the last thing that I could understand you saying was that you've been working very diligently to connect the need in Kane County with the product supply that you have. And then you gave some statistics. Is there any chance you could go back and do that again a little slower for us?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me a little bit better now?
We can hear you well, but a little slower.
All right, it sounds good. So yeah, in this past month, like in the month of April, we sort of looked back at, how many meals and how many families that we've been serving across Northern Illinois. So right now, we are distributing around 8.6 million meals a month, which is a significant increase from where we were at last year. And I think that a big focus for us as a food bank has been sort of helping folks who are still sort of trying to get back on their feet after COVID. And especially like in Kane County, we are getting ready to launch our Meals on the Move program in the summer, which will run from June 1st to August 6th, primarily focused in Aurora, which is a program sort of tailored to families and the younger children who have sort of been like depending on, lunches from schools and sort of like bridging that gap into the summer months. And I think right now where we're at as a food bank is sort of trying to figure out which of these programs are gonna, best serve our neighbors in King County and across Northern Illinois. I think that we're still sort of figuring out what the next steps are with some of our government commodities, sort of looking a little bit different in the next couple of months. But I'll be sure to share any information that comes my way.
Mr. Chairman, wasn't that a lot better?
Yes, it was. We even got to see her picture here. So if you come with us, it was up there.
Great. Yeah.
May I-
Apologies for that. Yeah. If you ever need me to speak up,
There, there's
don't
her
hesitate
picture
to let me
again.
know. Mhm.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question of Chelsea?
Okay.
Chelsea, my question, Meals on the Move is a program that you're using in Aurora, connecting kids who would be in school and making sure that when they're out of school that there's food for them and their families. Is there any reason that you're not doing that in Elgin? Is the need not as great there?
We actually are expanding that program to Elgin. So we're still sort of working out some of the dates, and we'll be like launching like some of our flyers very soon. But yes, we're also doing that in Elgin. Yeah, and it's based on like this program specifically is really reliant on some of our donors in the area. But yes, it will be sort of centered around Elgin and Aurora.
That's great, thanks.
Of course.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? We'll move. Do you have a question? Okay.
And welcome,
along.
Chelsea.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Move along to Matt Tansley.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Today, I wanted to spend a little time focusing on one farmer that was recognized in Kane County, or not in Kane County, but in the Farm Week publication by the Farm Bureau. I wanted to do this just because we're entering the growing season, and farmers are, as Steve acknowledged, moving at a record pace right now. So it just seemed appropriate to recognize the work of one Kane County farmer who's really moving at a tremendous pace. And so it warrants some recognition. So the article featured Steve Pittstick, who operates out near Maple Park. And he does plant mostly corn and soybeans. And he gave an interview with Farm Week. And so I can share the link with the committee members if you'd like to read that in full. But he just talked a bit about how the season is starting out and how they essentially finished all of their planting by the first week of May, which he felt was really a record for his operation and moving at really tremendous speed. He did acknowledge the rainfall shortage has been a bit of a challenge. I mean, it could be an issue moving forward. If the rain doesn't pick up, it could pose some challenges. But on the flip side of that, it has really allowed farmers to do a lot of field work and to be out and just getting all the work done that they need to be doing to get ready for planting and the start of the season. And so I do have a video that Steve was featured in. This was back during the fall, during the harvest season, but it gives a nice picture into his operation and just kind of, the day-to-day activities that he's involved with on the farm. So I'll just give Blair a minute and he can cue up that video for us.
Those emotions, they were put on hold by time, but at Claire's bridal weekend at a Verbo beach house, those emotions also made the trip. Your together awaits.
I'm Steve Pittstick. I farm here in northern Illinois, about an hour west of Chicago. I farm about 2,500 acres of corn and soybeans, pretty much a half and half rotation. My typical day, it varies, but usually we arise around between 5:30 in the morning. What I usually do is check the markets, see what's going on overnight, see how the markets are trading, what kind of intelligence the market is getting of what's happening out in the field. Should I sell more grain today on an up market? Should I wait? Should I store the crop? That's early part of the day. Once we get the sun up, things burn off, dried up, we can start harvest 9 to 10 a.m. We get out in the field, mostly machinery prep, fixing anything that needs to be repaired from yesterday, fueling up the machine, greasing it, cleaning the windows, things like that, and just game on from there. So in our operation, we look at a 40-day window of opportunity to get that crop harvested, both the corn and soybeans. Today is day 7, so we're approaching the 25% threshold of being complete. I grew up in a farm family, multi-generational, so I come from a long line of agriculturalists. 2 of my brothers farm in the area. When I don't have anything to do, I go help them, or vice versa. We help each other out. 45 years of doing this every year is uniquely different. The 2 weeks, 3 weeks leading up to harvest is a challenging time. I get a little bit anxious. You know, harvest is my report card. It's my grading of how well I did. What is the yield? What did I do right? What did I do wrong? What can I do better next year? We always have Mother Nature to blame if we do something wrong, or if the outcome isn't what we want it to be. The quality of the grain is exceptional. Every year has a challenge, and I'll take the 2 driest soybeans because it's just a fantastic harvest. During harvest, our soybeans go to a variety of places. We're in a unique spot. We're just 50 miles from the last stop on the Illinois River. That's our best market. That allows for a very limited amount of handling of the soybeans. So each time they're handled, there's damage that could occur. We're going straight from the combine to the grain storage. It will come out of the grain storage, go directly to the barge, which would then float down to the Mississippi and then to New Orleans and be shipped anywhere around the world. I really love what I do. And, you know, we're taking the assets out here that we're given, the soil, the rainfall, the sunlight, and we're combining all those with a little nurturing from us to produce a high-quality crop that goes on to become part of the food chain that feeds animals that then other people, you know, are consuming. It's a fantastic feeling to get out in the field when everything is running smooth. We're running 3 machines. If we can get a good 12 hours in, we call it good. It's just really fun to just clean a field and gather that harvest. There's some satisfaction as you look back over that, a job well done, waiting to come back and do it again next year.
Right, so Steve had mentioned the Illinois Water Survey, and I did just want to share a little bit of information from some of the recent results that were published. And it's interesting to see that Northern Illinois has really been hit more than the other parts of the state in terms of the limited amount of rainfall that we've received. And so you can see just some of the water measuring sites around the county, Batavia, Elgin, Montgomery, St. Charles, all registering pretty low levels of precipitation. And I should note that this doesn't take into account that the rain that we got yesterday. So this would probably be a little bit higher once that's factored in. But when looking at other parts of the state, we can see that it's definitely below the norm and what other parts of the state have been receiving. So we'll see how that proceeds and how farmers can adapt. I also wanted to note that the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program is still active and ongoing. This is a USDA program to assist farmers that are producing food crops and commodities. And it was opened last year, then it had closed, but it was reopened in April. and it's supposed to remain open for at least 60 days. And a deadline hasn't been established yet, but that's still a program that farmers can take advantage of if they haven't already, if they meet the criteria for that. And there is currently set aside about $4.5 billion in payments that are expected to be made to up to 560,000 farmers. So on average, that could be about $8,000 per farmer. And really the commodities are pretty broad, covering everything from row crops to specialty crops to dairy products, livestock, and so forth. So it's pretty all-encompassing, and it's definitely an opportunity that we want to see farmers in Kane County taking advantage of. And lastly, as the growing season is getting underway, and also as restaurants are beginning to reopen and reach full capacity, this is another opportunity for farmers to take advantage of that market. And so there was a publication released, I think it's been out for a while, but it was published by the local food marketplace. It's primarily a technology company that provides technical assistance to farmers, but they do publish a couple of free white papers that are available to farmers. And one of those is a guide for farmers selling their products to restaurants. So any farmer can go to the website and download that and get some tips and guidance on how to reestablish or to build those partnerships from the ground up. So covers a range of topics from just getting organized and planning how those partnerships can be established, just some common mistakes that can be avoided, and also how to work with different community organizations that can be a good pipeline and connection to working with restaurants, whether it's chambers of commerce or other groups like that can help farmers make those relationships work. And that is all I have for today.
Did you say anything about the opening of the farmer markets?
I know that several are
It was in the
open.
Daily Herald today, but I forgot to bring my copy. But I know Batavia's open, and I suppose Aurora, the first one. That's it.
Yeah, I believe most of them are open by now. So yeah, we encourage everyone to get out and to buy local.
Buy local. All right, is Janice Hill around?
Yes, I am. Good morning, everyone.
Morning,
Yeah, many of
Janice.
the markets are going to open Memorial Day weekend. It's going to be a big opener, I think. So stay tuned. You'll see more promotions, I think, coming up. And if Blair can open up my PowerPoints, let's see here. I'm going to have two presentations. The first one is going to be about soil health. And then May, as the item after, is on Mental Health Awareness Week. But we can start off with soil health. And it was nice to see Steve Pittstick on that video. Steve has contributed quite a bit to our county and to our state. Steve has been on our Farmland Protection Commission. I know he's worked extensively with Farm Bureau, and then also serves on the Illinois Soy Association Board as, I believe, vice president, I think. So he's active. I know I've had calls from him while he was working, asking questions about different things. So he is a very good multitasker. And so one of the things that there's so much information going on right now and happening with farming. If you happen to look at any of the farm journals or open up any of the magazines today, everything, you will see something about farmers and something about soil and water. It's across the board, not just within the industry, but just in everyday life. And if you remember, a lot of our planning documents and policy documents, 2020 plan, 2030, 24, always have a statement in there about Kane County has some of the best soils in the world, right? And we got that statement from the NRCS, which is our federal and national and our state office that classified Illinois soils in a grouping as prime farmland soils based on their physical and their chemical characteristics and their suitability for production as being some of the highest and the best in the productivity index, which is how our soils are valued here in Illinois. So all of this saying is we do have some of these best soils, and there are contribution to be able to do everything that you see happening with what Steve's doing all the way down to our local food producers. But now you'll also see these ads and other things about all of the eco benefits of soil too, and people turning to farmers saying they are going to save all of us from climate change, and they have a major contribution in that. And so it brings up this topic of, well, why and how and what about this soil? And what do we need to do about this? And so I think it places quite a challenge and maybe even a burden on farmers' shoulders to try to figure this out in terms of what should they be doing with their operation. And so that's what we've been doing at the staff level, trying to understand some of this and wrap our arms around it. We aren't farmers and we're not soil scientists on our staff. You know, Tony and Matt and I are planners, land use planners by profession, and we have a lot to learn, yet we want to bring some of this information to our programs and trying to sort through what's important for farmland protection, what's important for our farmers, and how do we gather this information. There seems to be a new report, new information released every week. So one of the things I recently found, you can go to my next slide, please, is a podcast. And, you know, there's a podcast for everything these days, even something called a shortcast that, you know, can happen in a couple of minutes. This particular one has been put together by Extension and also the group that works on our Illinois nutrient loss reduction strategy. I will tell you that there are many episodes. I just happened to find the one that we're going to listen to today, which is Getting the Dirt on Healthy Soils. But it really, to me, I thought gives us a really nice basic understanding from a researcher's point of view and then a farmer's point of view. And then later we can talk a little bit more about cover crops. I'll just go through a couple slides on cover crops, and then Tony's going to go through a model of how we might assess the benefit to the county, not just the farmer, of using cover crops and some of its challenges. So that's what we have in store today, just a little, no answers, just learning. And so we'll listen to this podcast. I think it runs for about 14 minutes, and then we'll do a few slides. Thanks, Blair. So that was 16, I think, right? Yeah.
This is the Illinois Nutrient Loss Reduction Podcast, Episode 16, Getting the Dirt on Healthy Soil. I'm Extension's Todd Gleason. We're now joined by Andrew Margonaut. He's an assistant professor of soil science here on the Urbana-Champaign campus of the University of Illinois. Andrew, thank you for being with us. Can you first define for me soil health?
Soil health is a relatively new concept compared to other concepts in soil science. You can think of soil health in terms of where it came from. So the origins of soil health perhaps were really from the Dust Bowl. People talked about soil tilth as a way to mitigate the Dust Bowl erosion loss of soil. And then that got taken care of. So then we see this resurgence in soil quality in the 1980s. And that's more of building upon the concept of tilth is now quality in an effort to integrate chemical, physical, and biological aspects of soils. But that project was not really realized until the last decade or two with soil health. So the difference between soil quality versus soil health is a more explicit focus on the biology of soils. And we find this big emphasis on the microbes that make the cogs of the food chain work in soils.
So how do you make your soil health, soil tilth, better?
That is a good question, and one of ongoing scientific study. I think here we can learn a lot from what people know works. So what I mean by this is, what is the objective metric of a healthy soil? And it seems sort of obvious. The term itself is intuitive. We know, just like our bodies, what is a state of being unhealthy or maybe not so much. When it comes to actually parsing that out down to brass tacks, it gets a little bit more tricky. And this is because a lot of the phenomena or properties that we know are important for soil function, they're tough to compare. So it's sort of apples to bananas. For example, what is a pH of a healthy soil? And how does that get weighed against a biological property like microbial biomass carbon, or a physical one like soil aggregate stability? So these are qualitatively important, but integrating it can be tricky. That said, I think the utility of soil health is in that it makes people think about keeping roots in the ground to drive the soil food web, and second, not disturbing that process to the greatest extent possible. So to answer your question, what can we do to make soils healthy? Two things that we know definitely work, both scientifically and from what farmers are doing, is to minimize the disturbance of soils and to keep roots as long as possible. And that typically looks like, in our part of the world, cover cropping.
Can it do things to, for instance, reduce phosphorus loss?
Potentially. And my favorite answer that is ubiquitous in soil science is, it depends. I think there's a lot of work that might need to be done to quantify under what circumstances can cover crops give us a double win of mitigating both nitrogen and P losses. There's reason to think that for cover crops, phosphorus losses might be lessened or perhaps exacerbated. And there's a lot of work to be done here on the species of the cover crop, as well as the timing of when it gets terminated and when there might be a window of vulnerability for phosphorus losses to happen. The reason for this is that there's lots of orthophosphorus contained in plant cells, so following the termination of that cover crop, there might be a flush of DRP in the runoff. So there's sort of this double-edged sword to consider about cover crops when it comes to phosphorus. On the whole, though, I think there's reason to expect that cover crops will likely provide benefits to phosphorus losses, or rather to mitigate those losses, largely done by their reduction of erosion.
Different subject matter a little bit. When there are large gullies or erosion, as you mentioned, in a field, are there things that producers can do and should do to create a better environment and to fix those problems?
Definitely. There's two ways to think about this. One is that you can treat the symptom and you can treat the problem. So the symptom is that there's this yawning gap in your field. And so that, of course, has to be addressed, or it should be, because the risk of gully erosion is that it feeds back on itself. So it's almost a feed-forward process. To circumvent that, the best approach is to fill it in. And there's lots of resources by the USDA, NRCS on what kind of fill. Can you use topsoil? Can you use subsoil? The biggest thing would be to fill it, to try not to disturb it for that season. Now that can get tricky if there's a gully cutting across one's site. So that's the immediate treating that problem, stopping the bleeding, so to speak. Then there's also, I think, some thought that should be given to why is there gully erosion occurring on my field. It could have been a very bad year, a very wet year like what we're having right now. It could also be that perhaps the traffic is a little bit too much or the tillage a bit too intense in that part of the field. Are there things that could be done literally upslope of where that gully has emerged to mitigate the velocity and thus that erosional power of water going downslope? So there might be some simple things like a grass strip, and that can then prevent future gully erosion from happening, because though one might fill it in, if the practices or the conditions that lead to that happening don't get addressed, it's likely for that gully to reopen the next season.
What's your research about here?
Three main things. I'm a soil scientist, and I like to think that, well, soils provide a lot of services to human well-being. And the obvious one is we grow food, but we also grow fuel, like ethanol. We also grow fiber. We also do things with soils like build homes, both on it and with it, like bricks. So what my lab does is we try to understand how soils function to provide those services. More concretely, we work in 3 places or in 3 areas. One is how to manage phosphorus as the Goldilocks nutrient. So globally, we tend to have these scenarios of a little bit too much phosphorus, and then in some cases, a little bit too little. So on these twin aspects, we work in the Midwest and in developing nations in the tropics, East Africa, South America. A second pillar of what we do is looking at high-value perennial tropical crops. So here, our favorite crops of coffee and cacao. You know, things that we like to eat. They're grown by smallholder farmers globally in the tropical belt. And there's not much knowledge known about how to close yield gaps, but also quality gaps with these crops. And finally, we work in more fundamental biochemistry of soils. This gets at, in our applications, for example, looking at nutrient cycling, what makes those processes go forward? So we look at things like enzymes and microbes to understand the inner workings of soil function and soil health.
So that's soil health, soil tilt from the scientist's perspective, Andrew Margonotz. He, again, is an assistant professor of soil science here on the Urbana-Champaign campus of the University of Illinois. Adam Braun is a Fayette County farmer and a participant in the Tri-State Advanced Soil Health Training, which was presented by University of Illinois Extension. I asked him to tell us a little bit about his view of soil health, starting with, of course, his operation.
So we're a mid-sized farm, and we farm a good mix of upland ground and river bottom ground, raising corn, soybeans, and wheat. And we no-till quite a bit and try to increase our no-till acres every year. And I feel like, you know, maybe our soil diversity has given us a bit of an extra challenge in trying to implement that as far as a one-size-fits-all system. So while we're not 100% no-till yet, we're striving for it, and we do no-till and minimum till about 95% of our acres, and have a goal to be 100% never-till sometime in the next 2 to 5 years. So we're working on that. We've been cover cropping for about 10 years, and we're just now to the point where we feel somewhat comfortable in cover cropping, you know, a more sizable portion of our acres. And we'd like to increase the cover crop acres in the futures. And we, to the point we're at, we started with one species of cover crops, you know, monocultures, and we're trying to move more into the direction of cover crop mixes.
Yeah, what do you do to improve your soil health?
So I think no-till and cover crops are both great steps towards improving soil health. You know, they're important practices to improve soil aggregation, and that's just a fancy term to say basically the soil structure or the glue of the soil, which helps prevent the erosion and helps keep increasingly heavy farm equipment from making tracks and ruts through our fields. It's, you know, it's important in allowing that water to enter the soil instead of running off down into the ditch. And the soil should actually function as a sponge and not a brick. And that's the point of soil aggregation. That extra water that the soil is soaked in during the spring rain events is a pretty big deal when you get farther along into the summer and you get into the dry season. Another thing, I firmly believe in a great starter system on our corn planter. So it's all about putting the nutrients where the corn plants can access them, and thereby improving our nutrient use efficiency. And it's enhanced our corn yields too, by the way. So how can you go wrong with that? I don't see a downside.
So have you seen less erosion damage in your fields since adopting the conservation practice?
Yeah, and I'd say that goes without saying. Seeing is believing to me. Because really one of my favorite things to do during an early spring rain event is to just drive around and look at the water that's running out of my fields. And you can tell by the color of it, which is clear, by the way, now. And then you can compare it to neighboring fields that are, you know, managed a little bit differently. The difference is usually pretty stark. You know, when I compare that clear water running out of my fields to neighboring fields that are kind of muddy and dirty and very brown, at that point, I know for certain that we have reduced erosion. And I'll be the first one to admit that, you know, our water used to not be so clear. And not only that, I've seen improvement in the areas in the fields that have had chronic washouts. So we used to have to take tillage equipment around into those areas that were washed out, fill in the ditches, and then we'd do a tillage pass across the field, you know, just to make everything uniform. And then that tillage pass would destroy our soil aggregation, and then it would wash away again during the next big rain event. So there we got caught in a vicious cycle. And the important thing is you have to identify that you are caught in that cycle and break it somehow. And that's what we did, and we're not going back.
Hey, what advice do you have for farmers thinking about adopting practices like you have? Reduce tillage, no-till cover crops, improve fertilizer management, and the lot.
The most important thing you can do at the start is improve the small things and strive to increase uniformity across all your acres. When you focus on uniformity, improving uniformity, the solutions to the problems that you encounter along the way seem to pop out. So I'm talking about like simple things, like making sure your combine straw chopper is distributing material evenly. It's an important first step in no-tilling the following year. So then find another small thing that improves uniformity and fix that. And pretty soon you'll have a farm uniform enough to be no-tilled and cover cropped. But keep an open mind through that transition and enjoy the opportunity to be creative, because that's what you're really doing, is you're really creating a system that works on your farm. And that system that you create will be different than what your neighbors do. And in fact, it's going to be very unique to your own farm. And that's the part that I really consider to be the fun part, because you get to enjoy the opportunity to differentiate your farm from the status quo and improve your bottom line along the way.
Adam Braun is a farmer from Vandalia, Illinois, and joined us on this Illinois Nutrient Loss Reduction Podcast, episode number 16, Getting the Dirt on Healthy Soil. I'm University of Illinois Extension's Todd Gleason.
All right. So that was interesting. And what I think the largest takeaway that I have, that next slide is fine. The largest takeaway that I have from that is this is a transition that we're in, and that the farmers will have, and that it's it's very individualized. So for us, the staff, in helping to create programs that support this transition for our farmers, bring resources, we have to come up with something that can be very individualized. So that's what we're doing right now in terms of writing grants and looking at resources that we can bring to our farmers to help with this, because it's happening. It's actually required for some participation in some of our easement programs, right? So everybody is looking at this. So I put this slide up because take a look at who's involved with these programs. There isn't anyone here that is involved with agriculture that isn't working on this topic. We have a grant into Illinois Soybean Association. I've talked to PCM about their work. They've received a grant from the federal government. Maybe we'll be getting some technical resources here. Where in regular, that PCM is precision management. They're the ones that do the nutrient management. Soil and water districts, everyone is involved with this, which is awesome, right? Next slide, please. And then, you have to ask why, and there are lots of reasons why, but I think the immediate pressure has to do also with climate change. I mean, we have our individual issues here in Illinois with water and what we are going to do with, we have goals we really need to meet in terms of our nutrient loss reduction. But at the same time, we know that in the background, we have this pressure of climate change, We just talked extensively about lack of rain, and yet when that webinar or that podcast was recorded, whenever that was a while ago, apparently they were in a different time and season. I mean, these are the experiences that are going to happen more frequently. We know that that's how we are going to experience climate change here in the Midwest. And the answer to that for us, in terms of what the experts are saying, are exactly this. These are the practices, the cover crop, the tillage. These are the things that will protect our soil in terms of going through these changes. That those are the best things that we can do here in the Midwest. The answers in other parts of the country for farmers are going to be different, but for us here, with our corn and soybean rotation, those are the very best things. Next slide. Unfortunately, there's not enough money to be able to support the farmers doing this. And so that's also why staff is involved to try to help do this. The programs you heard from Patrick at the Soil and Water District about the STAR program, it's an awesome program. Peer-to-peer, farmer-to-farmer, it started at Champaign Soil and Water District. These are some of the results from their report card. They take that aggregate in terms of what's happening, and it's gone way beyond Illinois now. You can see the other states that have incorporated the STAR program. They use, again, the three things that work for us here in the Midwest: the conservation tillage, the cover crop, and the nutrient management strategies, and then translate that to greenhouse gas removal and all these different climate change adaptation and reduction things that will help for the public to understand what this gives us, because there is an overall public benefit. And again, that's why we're also here talking about this, not just what's good for our individual farmer and good for his operation and good for his bottom line. Very, very important for us here in this area where our farmers farm, in the peri-urban area where they're up against other land uses. Also in a restricted area where there isn't going to be additional land to push out and farm into. Very restricted areas, so we have those challenges as well. So next slide, please. So for us, because we participate in the federal farmland protection programs, the expectation is that the farmers that participate will be doing some of these things, including, you can see on the right, the land management practices. There's lots of them. Cover cropping is number 340 according to the NRCS codes, but there are other things too, depending on what the operation is. So we will have customized plans for our farmers that are doing easements, and we're seeking more funding and financial support for both the staff to be able to hire assistants to be able to do this, and then for the farmers to be able to do it. Not only public support, but private support as well. Because making this transition and doing these things is a process, as you heard farmers talk, and I'm sure our farmers could talk too. In fact, it's not recommended to go completely into a change. You know, it's recommended to do small steps, test, evaluate, and then add on. Next slide, please. And so now Tony's going to give you an idea of some of the tools that are out there that we have to use to see what kind of outcomes you could get on a farm. And for us, some of this will be too, so that we can explain, measure what the public benefit would be, but also when we ask for funding, what that benefit would be. Okay. Tony?
Thanks, Janice. So what I have pulled up here is some of the first steps in using the Comet farm tool, which was created by Colorado State University in collaboration with the USDA to try and provide farmers with the ability to estimate what kind of practices will have the best impacts in terms of their emissions. There are multiple different farm types that you can apply this to. I've selected croplands just for the purposes of this this presentation. But there are 4 cropland, 39 different practices available in this tool that you can apply to try and understand a little bit about what kind of impacts you're going to have. It's not a comprehensive list, but it does include a lot of the most common practices, things like mulching, cover crops, reducing tillage, that sort of a thing. So I've gone ahead and selected cover crops. You can see in the box in the bottom right that you can break that down further to get a more detailed understanding. This is just applying estimates right now. So if you want to get really specific with it, if there's a specific site that you want to look at, whether that's because you're a farmer or maybe it's because it's a parcel that's going through our farmland protection program, we can actually look at estimates that are specific to that site as opposed to sort of a county average. Go ahead to the next slide, please. So for this example, I've selected three different practices, applying it to an 88-acre farm. This is a farm that we just brought through farmland protection a little while back. These are not practices that these are just example practices. They might not be like an optimal combination, but it gives you an idea of how the tool can work and how it can provide estimates. So the first practice that I have there is cover crops with a specific percentage of fertilizer reduction, and that could take that could basically reduce carbon dioxide emissions by 15 tons a year, which would be roughly equivalent to probably more than 3 cars off the road for the duration of that year. It's important to note, like as we heard in the audio that Janice played for us, a lot of this is going to be very dependent on the specific farm. This is just a rough estimate, and it's also going to depend on whether or not corn's being grown or soy in that year. But this is still useful. It can give us an idea of what sort of practices we might want to pay close attention to, and can play around a little bit in terms of when farmers come to us, especially for farmland protection, trying to figure out what kind of practices they're already doing, what they're entertaining doing, and allow that to help with our decision making as well. And that's pretty much the Comet tool. If we have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Bates, please. Go ahead, Miss Allen.
Bates, do you have a question?
I think Bates tapes.
What kind of mulching can you do in a big farm?
Well, I'm sure Steve could probably answer that in a little bit more detail. I know that this is typically integrated into the tillage process, and I know a lot of it is also often crop residues.
Oh, okay.
I'll hand that over to an actual farmer if you want a little more detail.
Okay. Leave the corn stalks?
Yeah, or grind them up, yeah.
Copy, please.
Copy. Save us,
Thank you,
Copy.
Mr. Chairman. I'd like to chime in on that mulching process. I've actually incorporated that this year on some small acreage, and just to see how it goes. I know for a fact that tree refuse, chips, when they grind these trees up into chips and so on and so forth, a lot of times it just gets buried or goes to the landfill or whatever. But what I've realized is that once that stuff ages and ferments and breaks down, that it makes a wonderful enhancing product for the soil. And what I do know also is that wood products have a tremendous amount of potassium just waiting to break down and go into the soil, and it retains water like nobody's business. It's just wonderful. And I brought this up when I first got onto the board, like one of the first board committee meetings with agriculture. I suggested that all wood products should go back into the soil and be incorporated back into the soil versus going to the scrap yard or the landfills, if you will. I know when in the big construction business, they don't take the businesses don't take their time to separate usable lumber, one, and two, it goes directly to the landfill. So, and they move by the semi loads off of these jobs every day, year in, year out. I've had to load out bunks and plywood and 2x4s that have never been used because they just don't have the time or the space to separate them. And then you look at a Google map of someplace like Haiti. There's not a tree standing, and they need a 2x4. They need soil enhancement. This stuff could be exported, even. You know, it's just a sad state of affairs. We are a wasteful nation. I hate to say that, but thanks, Mavis, for that, allowing me that moment to chime in. Long-winded as usual.
Spoken like a true environmentalist, Mr. Copey.
Oh, I'm worried now.
Are there any questions or other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, this is Alan.
Oh, Mrs. Allen.
Tony, can I ask you what a non-legume seasonal cover crop is? I'm so used to thinking of the stuff on a field that is putting legume-like material back into the soil. We were told that was a good thing. So what's a non-legume seasonal cover?
Non-legume, you say, right? How about radishes?
Yeah, there are a lot of different options. One of the ones that's common in Illinois is clover.
Cool. Okay. And Mr. Chairman, did you say radishes?
I see people plant them and they loosen the soil too, the deep roots.
You are such a clever farmer. Thank you.
Not quite what we're going to eat, though, I'll tell you that. Is that all right, Debbie?
Perfect, sir.
Okay. Any other questions? Stephen? Stephen's got a big meeting he's got to take care of. I wanted to call our attention. We are going to have a county fair. So it will be in it. If you want it to succeed, you have to go there. People criticize them, but they try all sorts of things. You got to, of course, it's right at the hottest month of the year, and it'll be hot, dry, and then you can go to the beverage tent. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Who's going to talk about that? Stephen?
That'll be Janice. Yep. Just to wrap up on those practices, thanks, Tony. You know, there's not enough money, federal, public government money coming from the feds into the state and down to our farmers to support cover crops. There's legislation that has been working its way through. So we want to be supportive of that. And then we continue to look for more funding to support our farmers to do these practices so that we can gain the public benefit as well as the soil gain the benefit and then the overall public benefit. And then that's just one tool. We'll probably be back, showing you other tools as Tony starts to try different ones out so that we can look at potential on the water benefits and all these different things. So stay tuned. You'll see more from us on that. So now I can move to May is Mental Health Month. Health is everything, right? Whether it is soil or human health, and human health is no longer just a physical, we can't just measure that in a physical way. There's, we have to think about mental health, and those things are intertwined. I think we all know that. I don't know if my slides are up. I can't see if they're up or not.
They are up, Janice.
Oh, okay, good. I just can't see them. So anyway, I just couple things that I just wanted to. Oh, there it is. So, if you remember, because I mentioned we are planners, and if you remember, we have all the work that we're doing here at AG is outgrowth of our 2020, 2030, 2040 plans and upcoming plans. And we have talked about health as a major component of our planning work. And probably about 10 years ago, maybe it's been, I don't know, Mark, how long it's been, but we started including the health department in the work, foundational work of the health community into our plans. And the social determinants of health is one of the major policy and foundational topics that we included into our work, which recognizes basically that a person's health, a community health, is not just determined by, for example, their blood scores, right? There are many, many factors that are external factors that will influence positively or negatively a community health. And those generally, according to the experts, fall into 5 particular areas. And for us as planners, we really focused on that neighborhood and built environment quite a bit, although we recognize the other areas are very important. But we knew, being involved as planners, that we could really influence that neighborhood and built environment, right? We focused on quite a bit of that in the environmental conditions. Next slide, please. I noticed, and as I started to revisit this topic, as I'm looking at this, the same organization is now recognizing that those determinants also include mental health. It's not a surprise. We know this is a big topic. Certainly, if the COVID pandemic taught us anything, we know that mental health is critical. It's critical for many different things, many aspects, and it's a wellness issue as well for all of us. You could just look at being confined as one aspect to recognizing how important mental wellness is, and that there are many risk factors and outcomes. In the social conditions, they're starting to define what those are in terms of what influences and public mental health or an individual's mental health or mental wellness, if it's shaped in that way. One thing they recognized are shared safe places for people to interact, and they recognize parks. I will broaden that out to open space, and I will include agriculture in that in my definition. Certainly, if you look back to our founding ordinance for farmland protection, we identified the scenic beauty and scenic value of our agriculture area as one of the foundational whereas clauses that created the ability for us to have our farmland protection ordinance. And then certainly in all of our documents as well, in terms of one of the reasons that we want to keep agriculture and open space. There's a huge public benefit for everyone, and I think it's been recognized. Next slide. But at the same time, we also know that farmers as a sector, as an industry, as a family function, if you come from a farming family, you know that there is a very blurred line between doing the work and the industry. You saw that today with Steve in his video. You know, he walked out of the house and right into his, in fact, there was a blur, there was a total blur. He was doing his work right in the home. I think now with COVID, we can kind of understand what that's like for those of us that worked in the home during COVID, right? And those challenges that are faced, many external factors that are not controlled. And that conversation that the committee was having before the meeting too, all the external factors, assessment, all these different things, market prices, loan rates, extreme weather. These are only going to continue to be a challenge. We know too that stress and stressors are one thing. It's a question of response and how we respond. So we put these resources here. This is from the American Psychological Association. They've worked with farmers in the farming community for a while to identify those. Also, the Illinois Farm Bureau has a great website with resources, just as this one does too. And I think what we will do is ask that an article be written. I know that Matt can also release something through Growing for Cane but maybe we can also have an article for the entire county to read. The Illinois Farm Bureau website is Farm State of Mind. There's a resource directory as well. So I just ask that we acknowledge the farming community here and that they hold us all up, and that we acknowledge all these resources that are here to help all of us, because all good communities need good mental wellness. So that's about all I have to say about that.
Are there any questions or comments? I see the next thing we have is Governor's Energy Plan Solar. It's attached.
Yes, good morning. I'll handle this one. You're actually the last committee stop before it goes to executive committee and the full board. We've taken this a topic to energy and environmental, to county development, to legislative yesterday, and then now with agriculture today. So one of the main reasons we had to stop here in agriculture was there are some things in the governor's energy bill pertaining to siting for wind and solar facilities. And Blair, can you go to that last item? Actually, before you go to that one, within the agenda packet, there's the very last solar siting language. And then that's fine. Actually, go ahead and put the one I just sent you up. So a couple components to this that Jody Walnick and I have been working with Mavis Bates and others, and ISACO was working on behalf of all counties on responding to some of the language. Development Committee and Legislative Committee yesterday focused mostly on the aspects of how it pertains to the county zoning authority. So I won't park on that so much this morning. Other than, our concern is the language that they have in so far, basically kind of handcuffs counties to use their zoning process to really develop a good site plan and something that's responsive to the actual, unique parcel of land where a siting proposal is being made and the unique characteristics of the surrounding community and uses. So I'm going to be adding some language to the resolution that was moved on to the executive committee by legislative committee yesterday. But one of the good aspects, positive aspects of the bill is that it does more closely bind those sites for wind and solar to the agricultural mitigation impact plan that has been a requirement for those to be submitted, but there's not been a strong, real strong tie for those sites and a more heavy threat in terms of what happens if they're not following the plan. If you could scroll to page, actually from here, if you could go to the one I just sent you, Blair. I'm sorry, I keep flipping you back and forth here. I'm going to thank Mavis Bates. During the course of this meeting, she forwarded the latest version of the language. And then scroll to page 6 of that, please. Yeah, right there. Stop with the, yeah, perfect. So thank you, Mavis, for sending this on. And this is related to what I was just talking about. Part of the language talks about the applicant shall control weeds and vegetation on the land where ground-mounted solar systems is located in accordance with the Agricultural Impact Mitigation Agreement. Again, this bill seems to strengthen the follow-up and conformance with that agreement. And then they just added some additional language that a county may require a vegetation plan that identifies opportunities for the environment, for maintenance practices, control of weeds, and pollinators. So Mavis, this appears to be a positive improvement to the language as well related to the agricultural mitigation plan. But other than that, Mavis, if there's anything you want to add or if there's any additional comments from committee members involved in the other committee discussion. So I don't want to drag this on longer than we need to, but definitely give you opportunity to make any additional comments that'll help me form the last bits of the resolution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There is one more red section down a little bit farther, Mr. Van Kerkhoff, if you want to just note that there is thank you, there's the red. Anything having to do with the conservation easement is also, we can say no to anything on the conservation easement. So the parts that we were most concerned about here were a loss of authority for the counties with respect to the setbacks from the solar, for a solar field from a nearby property line, or the dates, the number of days we were allowed for making all this happen. And so that's what will go into our resolution, which hopefully will pass in the next committee meeting and will be sent to the governor's office. So those are the main concerns. And we're trying to get this all done before May 31st, which is the end of the session for the General Assembly. So that was why we were putting some urgency to this. Okay, that's all.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, this is Alan.
Oh, hi, Debbie.
Hi, Michael. I just wanted to confirm with Mr. Van Kerkhoff that it seems as if you have put into place for our county protections that will carry over into this, in that we treat these proposed projects of solar and wind as special uses. And the special use language gives us the chance to consider a particular project in terms of, what's the topography, what's the geography, what's the highs and lows, where's the water, where are the neighbors, and so on. And so I think that you have said that the special use gives us those protections, even with what the state is up to. And I think that kind of, this is a case where good planning projects itself into the future and continues to be good planning. So I just wanted to say thanks, Mark, for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, it's free energy. I think what I read, the cost of solar has gone down dramatically, and it will reduce your bills as we grow into the future. Is there any more things to come before this meeting? Mr. Leonard Spence-Jamie, I said, this stress has to do with golfing too, or yard work.
Bates, please.
Bates, please.
One more little question. Maybe this goes to Janice Hill. Janice, with all this talk about, and to Ms. Wolnick, I don't know if Ms. Wolnick is here, but she covers issues to do with water. And I'm wondering, are we paying special attention to our aquifers during this semi-drought period? What's happening to our aquifers? Do you look at that?
I'm not sure if I'm not sure if Jody's on this call or not, but you may remember that we have that sub-watershed study that's ongoing that is being monitored regularly, and she has those locations set up, and they're coordinated with our farms and our farmland protection program so that we can monitor, we can do monitoring that will help influence some of our policy for farmland protection, and kind of find out where some of this, especially some of the neighbors, because we have land uses adjacent to farming that are large lot development. So we can find out how much of this influence is coming from those areas, the urban areas. And so it's going to be very interesting to find out, because I think there's an underlying assumption oftentimes that it's farm operations that are maybe negatively impacting the nutrients are negatively impacting the water quality it may in fact be runoff from the residential uses. And so that's part of what her study is looking at in some of, because we have some of these uses adjacent. So those sites are scattered around the county so that we can get a better sense of that. And I'm sure it will, she'll, and because they are monitored pretty regularly. So that I know she has ongoing. What else she has ongoing, I don't know.
Does the Farm
Jody is
Bureau
here. If I can jump in.
Oh, there she is.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
We do have a proposal out for some federal funding for a countywide monitoring network. We had a study that was completed by Illinois State Water Survey several years back, and that would certainly, in this drought type situation, better inform the county as to the status of our aquifers. So we're still pursuing grant opportunities to establish that network for Kane County, similar to what McHenry County has.
How can we help you do that, Jody? Or should we talk later?
We can talk later, but again, we're definitely out there looking for funding, with working with the chairwoman on different opportunities to try to get that network established for our residents.
Good, thanks.
Are we all good now?
Thank you.
Yeah, water's pretty important. We're down 13 inches of rain for this year. And if you drive around the countryside, go by our farm, we have a wet hole that's no longer wet. You see the geese walking around on cracked soil. So
Yeah, you see it in the Bliss Woods, the pond is dried up.
Even the forest reserve stuff is drying up. And I think it's very important for our birds. We have to make sure they get water. So buy a bird bath. Or
I have two.
I'm serious.
Two of them.
They need water too. Everything does.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's nothing else to come before the board, we need a motion to put the reports on file. Braun moves, Leonard seconds. Uh-oh.
Go ahead and vote.
Okay, all in favor, roll call?
We could take a consensus actually for this.
For the files?
Yeah, Shepro, this is Sanchez here. Shepro informed us of this recently.
Unanimous set, so we just do it without voting.
Fine.
Okay?
Which would you like?
Read the roll then. We'll see who's still awake.
Braun,
Yes.
Braz, Gopi, Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Allen, Mr. Kenyon.
And Kenya and I. Now, Mr. Van Kerkhoff?
I just wanted to give a thanks and shout out to our IT team who's supporting these meetings. I've had 3 days in a row now where I have literally forwarded them information while the meeting was ongoing, while they're managing Zoom and callers and special guests. And they do so cheerfully and willingly, and professionally. You wouldn't even know that they were getting stuff last minute. So I just want to give them a shout out and a big thanks, because it's really helped, especially with the fast developing information from the governor's energy plan discussion
That's the
item.
man
So
behind
thank
the
you,
screen.
Blair and
You're here.
Kelly.
Thank you, Blair.
Stephen, did you bring anything? Oh. We have raffle tickets. One. We'll give one raffle ticket. It will be a prize for answering the question. I gotta think of a question. Oh, who was the local farmer who had the nice video? He actually two.
Go ahead. Steve Pittstick.
Dave's Pittstick. So you get a complimentary entrance in the pickup raffle that the Farm Bureau is going to have.
Right.
So you could be driving what year pickup is it, Steve?
1972 Chevy C20.
Oh, I'm jealous.
Well, you
can buy them.
You could buy tickets. Mr. Brown bought tickets. So maybe I'll bring tickets to a meeting and give you a chance to get in on the.
Okay.
What's it? Is that the? Stephen?
They're 1 for 15. They are discounted for multiple, but 1 for 15 gets us past the ethics ordinance.
Well, we suggest you just buy a whole book and have your chance. Mr. Brown bought a book.
Bought 2 books.
That's right.
That truck.
You'd be pretty cool, wouldn't you?
Mr. Chairman, Sanchez here.
Yes, Mr. Sanchez.
I just wanted to say thank you real quick to Janice and Matt and Tony and everybody that's working on our local food issues, and to you as well and the committee for listening to it and having this work continue. When I started on the board, I mean, actually 10 years previous to me starting on the board, I believe I had discovered the agroecology and permaculture practices. Was barely talked about then, but now are becoming more popular, and it all had to do with soil health and conserving what you have, reducing your inputs from the outside. And I do think this is the future of agriculture. So I just wanted to thank everybody for continuing to work on this issue and bringing this to us each month.
All right. Is there anything else? We need a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, Strathman here.
Who? Strackman
Cheryl
moves?
Strathman. No, I'm not on the committee. I just have a comment.
A comment under the
Yes.
wire.
Yes, just
Okay,
under the
Cheryl.
wire. I wanted to thank you for a fabulous meeting this morning. All the information that was presented was really great. And I have really appreciated all the work and effort by our staff. And I just wanted to say thank you. It was great.
Okay. Would there somebody like to move we adjourn, or we're going to stay here all day? And
Brown to move.
Brown moves.
Leonard seconds.
Seconds. All in favor, say aye.
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 We're done.